Welcome to the fourth reading of the East Castle Place Writers Group. First of all, I'd like to welcome two new members, Kurt Fowler and Jane Peterson, who have joined us, and we're so glad that they did. Their presence kind of tells us that we have an open door at the Writers Group, and so if any of you are interested in joining, please do. Jane will be reading for us today, but Kurt was not able to. Since we have last met, we have been busy writing about many things, and also reaching out to see our words on print. I'm sure you have read some of our pieces in the East Castle Connection, and we all appreciate Gary Aubrey's work in that area. Terry's A View from the Porch has gotten to be a front page feature. Our readings today will include some writings from a prompt that has lasted almost a month now. It was write about what you have held on to despite many moves. You might call these items antiques, you might call them obsolete. We all have them, and we wrote about them. It'll also include other writings that have been prompted by other prompts and by the writers' lives themselves. Thank you for being here, and enjoy.
I'm Terry Sundberg. The prompt I used was, well, it was supposed to be the obsolete, but she said obsolete wood, glass, or mechanical, and I forgot the obsolete part and just chose the mechanical and wood. This is about a special gift. When Rudy was a young, upcoming executive, he was sent on a few overseas trips. With this company, wives were not allowed to accompany spouses on a business trip, even if one could afford to pay their own way, which we couldn't at that time. Rudy often brought a gift back for me, generally something made in or something typically from that location. Probably my favorite coming home gift is a music box from Switzerland. It doesn't appear fancy. It is a rectangular, smooth, wooden hinged box. The brass movement sits in the bottom of the box with a protective glass over it. You can watch the tines on the comb dance as they pass the pins on the cylinder when it goes around and around. It plays four tunes from Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite. I have no musical background, but to me the melodious sounds emanating from that box are enchanting. Every Christmas season, until we moved to Puerto Rico, we would take our children to the Nutcracker Ballet in Chicago. These familiar tunes remind me of those outings. When we began having grandchildren, the babies found the music soothing as well. I am fortunate to have made several trips to Switzerland subsequently. However, I have never brought back with me anything that I treasure more than this music box. I cannot remember the year when I received it. It's not an antique because I'm older than it is. However, the humidity has found its way inside, and the brass cylinder has started to corrode. It may eventually lose a pin or two because of that, and it may not keep its beautiful sound if that happens. However, it's always going to remain special to me for all the happy memories it holds. I'll play you a little bit of it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jane Peterson, and my partner Ellen and I moved here this past June. I'm going to read something I wrote in response to a prompt about obsolete things, only this ended up not being about obsolete things. But whatever, I hope you enjoy it. The title is, I Love Legos. Legos, those colorful plastic bricks our grandkids use to build the Star Wars Millennium Falcon or Dora the Explorer's treehouse. I sometimes play with them too. Ever since I discovered there's a whole Legos Architect series for those of us who have aged out of Disney and superheroes. You can tackle the Brandenburg Gate, Trevi Fountain, Burj Khalifa, which is that tall building in Dubai, or for art buffs, the Guggenheim and Louvre museums. Adults evidently enjoy Legos enough to inspire these mature projects that still appeal to the kid in all of us. However, I believe it's best to tackle Legos with a child, a glass of wine, and the Serenity Prayer to avoid accidentally building the Leaning Tower of Pisa or the remains of Pompeii instead of the Empire State Building pictured on your Lego box. I started with the Eiffel Tower. It only has 321 pieces, fewer than most jigsaw puzzles. How hard could it be? In my innocence, I expected to just look at the image on the box and build intuitively from there. After all, I'm pretty handy and like to put things together. I have no idea how many shapes of Legos exist, but I'm pretty sure it's in the thousands. There are Legos with tiny hinges, Legos with round bumps, flat Legos, fat Legos, and teensy tiny Legos which always end up lurking on the floor to impale your bare feet as you fetch yet another glass of wine. Fortunately, Legos come with thick illustrated books of instructions. If you have the spatial sense of Leonardo, you should have no problem following these pictures and creating a true to the original masterpiece. If you are spatially challenged like me, though, you'll be glad to know they also come with little plastic wrenches to undo your errors. And they must be undone or your whole structure may collapse, resulting in cursing, more wine, and staying up till 2 a.m. to repair the damage. I only violated this rule once when building a French restaurant. 2,469 pieces, including 4 miniature croissants, a recycling bin, and a rat. But I compensated for my mistake by cheating and substituting other blocks. I also built an RV, but I later disassembled it and the restaurant for younger friends, whose parents posted photos of the kids' completed projects on Facebook only one day later. Ellen and I still have the Eiffel Tower, Arc de Triomphe, and Louvre, all rendered in Legos. The Louvre even lights up. Besides the pleasure I took in making them, we enjoy seeing them on our end table. We'll always have Paris.
Hello, my name is Harriet Herrick. Obsolete. What in our home is obsolete? What is no longer in use, no longer in style, or replaced by a new version? Well, let me think. Wine glasses. When last did we have a bottle of wine in our home? Maybe it was 2 or 3 years ago at Christmas when our kids came over. We probably drank out of my black wine glasses, the ones that go so well with my black Buddha bowls. I remember when we first moved to East Castle Place. We invited our new friends Katie and Jim to come for a chilly dinner. I think that was in about 2012. I don't remember using the bowls or the wine glasses since. I wonder how much dust has collected on them sitting in our kitchen cabinets. And there's a set of wine glasses from France with cute little French dancers on them. And that set of pink and lavender wine glasses that shine with a silvery glitter. And we don't even drink wine anymore. The last time we drank out of our wine glasses was probably 3 years ago, when our daughter and her family brought us a complete Christmas dinner. The reason? She said it was a shame not to ever use the table and chairs that Don had built. I had designed a glass piece that fit in the back of each chair, and I had upholstered the seats and the back cushions. I was ordered to set the table with the glass plates that I had handmade a few years before, and we were to use the silverware that we had collected from various countries where we had traveled. So we sat at our handmade table and chairs, ate a delicious dinner catered by our family, and appreciated our own handiwork one more time while we drank again out of our obsolete wine glasses.
My name is Janice Collins. When I was growing up, my mother told me many stories about her childhood. This is one of them, about what happened to her mother one night. I think the prompt was to tell a scary story. A true story. Anna Malik was a young widow, made so by her husband's sudden and unexpected death after a simple surgery. She was left with 4 children, the 2 older girls, Helen and Bess, 5-year-old Victoria, who was my mother, and toddler George. She needed to be strong and tough, resourceful, and vigilant to the dangers inherent for a woman alone and unprotected. A late summer hour found Anna resting from a tiring day, remembering happier times, grateful that her sleeping children seemed content in spite of their unfortunate loss. She admired her garden behind her small cottage, where moonlight cast an eerie glow upon the ripening harvest. Suddenly, out of the shadows, a hulking figure of a man appeared staggering up the garden path to her kitchen door. Before she could collect her thoughts, there was a loud and hurried pounding on her door, and a rough, raspy voice demanding matches. "I need matches! Give me matches!" Finding her voice, Anna shouted, "No, I'll not give you matches this time of night. Go away! Go away!" "I'll give you matches," the angry intruder muttered as he lumbered away and disappeared down the darkened street. "I'll give you matches." No doubt the widow Malik stayed awake that night until morning light to be certain that I should do that over again.
Start about 3 paragraphs ahead.
Go back 3 paragraphs, okay. Suddenly, out of the shadows, a hulking figure of a man appeared staggering up to the garden path to her kitchen door. Before she could collect her thoughts, there was a loud and hurried pounding on her door, and a rough, raspy voice demanding matches. "I need matches! Give me matches!" Finding her voice, Anna shouted, "No, I'll not give you matches this time of night. Go away! Go away!" "I'll give you matches," the angry intruder muttered as he lumbered away and disappeared down the darkened street. "I'll give you matches." No doubt the widow Malik stayed awake that morning. No doubt the widow Malik stayed awake till morning light to be certain that her midnight visitor did not return. Her nerves were still on edge a day later. While weeding her garden, she unearthed a strange-looking pipe-like object. Was that a wick coming out of one end, she wondered? The police officer who responded to her frightened call carefully carried it away and assured her that it was nothing and that she should not worry. Not to worry? Why then, for the next several days, was a round-the-clock watch put on her little cottage. Different plain-clothed men walked the neighborhood, making sure that all was safe. Maybe I should do that last paragraph.
No, you know what? I think, just relax and do the whole thing. Do the whole thing, and then don't try to piece it.
Yeah, that's easier.
Yeah, that's easier. And just relax and do it. It's not that long. We like the story.
Okay.
Okay, start with a little intro.
I don't have to do the intro.
All the way through to the end.
What?
She might want to read it all the way through to the end.
That's what I just said.
But I don't need to make the first things like when I was growing up. I think that was okay. My paragraph at the beginning about...
Why don't you just do the whole thing and we'll tell him that because that isn't that long, and then he won't have to go back and find that little piece.
Hopefully I'll do it right till I get that one sentence. No doubt stayed awake till, I was stumbling. Okay,
We won't this time.
I won't this time. I'll stumble on something, you know. Okay, my name is Janice Collins. When I was growing up, my mother told me many stories about her childhood. This is one of them, about what happened to her mother one night. I think the prompt was to tell a scary story. A true story. Anna Malik was a young widow, made so by her husband's sudden and unexpected death after a simple surgery. She was left with 4 children, the 2 older girls, Helen and Bess, 5-year-old Victoria, who was my mother, and toddler George. She needed to be strong and tough, resourceful and vigilant. She needed to be strong and tough, resourceful and vigilant to the dangers inherent for a woman alone and unprotected. A late summer hour found Anna resting from a tiring day, remembering happier times, grateful that her sleeping children seemed content in spite of their unfortunate loss. She admired her garden behind her small cottage, where moonlight cast an eerie glow upon the ripening harvest. Suddenly, out of the shadows, a hulking figure of a man appeared, staggering up to the garden path to her kitchen door. Before she could collect her thoughts, there was a loud and hurried pounding on her door, and a rough, raspy voice demanding matches. "I need matches! Give me matches!" Finding her voice, Anna shouted, "No, I'll not give you matches this time of night. Go away! Go away!" "I'll give you matches," the angry intruder muttered as he lumbered away and disappeared down the darkened street. "I'll give you matches." No doubt the widow Malik stayed awake till morning light to be certain that her midnight visitor did not return. Her nerves were still on edge a day later. While weeding her garden, she unearthed a strange-looking pipe-like object. Was that a wick coming out of one end, she wondered? The police officer who responded to her frightened call carefully carried it away and assured her that it was nothing and that she was not to worry. Not to worry? Why then, for the next several days, was a round-the-clock watch put on her little cottage. Different plainclothes men walked the neighborhood, making sure that all was safe.
Hi, I'm Marion Fraley. I've been with the group for a little over a year now. And I'm writing about, actually I wrote this quite a little while ago. It was one of my earlier pieces, but it happens to match one of our more recent prompts to write about something that was old that we brought to East Castle. And sometimes you wonder why you brought some of the things that you brought, but anyway, this is called The Box. There you rest, still strong and sturdy, though battered, time-worn. Your vibrant green coat has faded to the softest moss gray, and your smooth, glossy surface has worn to fine velvet. Too inviting to discard once emptied, I stashed you at the back of a closet shelf for some future use, someday. Occasionally, you re-emerged to gradually collect scraps and bits of torn magazines and newspapers, or newspapers collected from friends and relatives. Over time, the slips and clips outgrew the confines of the box. They were sorted and filed, if you can call it that, into old envelopes and files with makeshift paper signs that bore hand-lettered labels: appetizers, desserts, main dishes, side dishes, and more. Still later, these were resorted into ever finer categories and grouped into coarsely labeled folders. Desserts morphed into a folder that contained envelopes labeled cakes, cookies, pies, puddings, etc. The cakes envelope eventually expanded to contain envelopes for chocolate, spice, fruit, vegetable, pound cakes, upside down. Wait, Do cheesecakes belong with cakes or pies? Madness. So it went as other boxes and binders were enlisted to contain their own collections and sub-collections. Then came purges. Too much fat or sugar, too complicated, too spicy, too bland, and so on. Through it all, my moss green velvet box survived, serene matriarch of all untold generations of recipes and household hints. Her glory days are over now, her vast array of recipes whittled down to a critical core that holds too much promise or too many memories to toss aside with a sigh or a shrug. Does anybody want to know how to make a hot milk cake? Aunt Mildred's bread and butter pickles? Potluck baked eggplant casserole? I've got you covered.
Thank you. I'm just thinking, I had about 5 different wooden boxes from various women relatives in the family. And if anybody wants farina cake recipe, I have that.
Oh boy. What's farina?
What's farina, somebody asked. And it's some kind of a wheat.
I think it's a breakfast cereal.
Well, as you can tell, I've written about a lot of the women in my family. And when we were going to write about something that we kept and we don't know why we kept it, I actually chose something from one of the men in the family. The piece I'm going to write about is about my grandfather, the shillelagh. My mother's father, my grandfather Patrick Byrne, came from Ireland, from Dundalk in County Louth, in the Republic, but abutting the county of Armagh, border of Northern Ireland. He came from a family of 9, and all those children of Michael and Anna Byrne migrated to America, dividing the clan between Chicago and Milwaukee. My grandfather settled in Milwaukee, where his older sister Delia ran a rooming house in the 3rd Ward. That's where the Irish settled, many of them digging out the bog, and some of them working on the railroad. And that's how he started his life, laying track, then gradually becoming better, not at laying track, but at railroading. He became a fireman, and then an engineer. Grandpa lived in a rooming house, that same rooming house, until he was 31, and married Mabel Redden, my grandmother, a country girl from Maple Grove in Manitowoc. Hers was a family with 9 children too, but their immigration went from farm to city, settling in the south side of Milwaukee. She too was 100% Irish. I learned to be Irish from my grandpa. He was the one with the stories about pony racing along the sand beaches in the harbor of Dundalk, the eels he caught in the stream behind their house, and considered a great treat, much to my dismay. The store his father owned, and how he read the letters of those who left for America, and then wrote the letters back to America. And the orange men he hated, who marched down High Street in July, wearing bowler hats and beating their big drums. The English ruling his country. My mother told me he only went back home once to see his family, to bring pictures of the family in America. Grandpa could read a poem for every occasion. He read it in his mind. He read it for all of us because he had it memorized, always by heart, for that's how he learned them. He was proud of being a railroad man and a union man and working for the Milwaukee Road for 50 years. After retirement, he wore his railroad cap for important missions, like carrying out the garbage and doing the shopping and taking my brother and I for walks. He had a pipe in his mouth at all times and was deaf, the result of the noise of engines and ear-splitting train whistles. The only thing I have of my grandfather's is the shillelagh that he brought from Ireland. Now, many of you have seen those very fancy walking sticks, the shiny ones. This is not one of them. But the shillelagh is a blackthorn stick with a large knob at the end. It can be of various lengths, used as a walking stick or a club, or in my grandfather's case, a cudgel. When in Ireland, every man walking along the narrow roads is swinging or leaning on a shillelagh. I do have a walking stick, but the one I inherited from my grandfather is that cudgel. I read in the old days the raw stick could be stuck up a chimney to cure it for months or years, where it accumulated the soot that gave it that shiny black appearance. Obviously now there are faster ways. My shillelagh looks like a weapon, and it might have been used that way. We hear stories about the Irish policeman in New York, but my grandfather was in Milwaukee, and he never told any stories about using it. You'll also notice that my shillelagh has a worn look. That is because our dog Mamie Riley, another Irish name, found it and thought it the perfect size for chewing. I never repainted it, and the dog's adventure is still very noticeable. So why have I held on to this shillelagh? Of course, it's the memory of my grandfather, who came here at the turn of the century, made a life for himself and for all his offspring. 3 generations of men and women are named for this Irishman. And if you ask me, I don't know if he ever did use that cudgel. He never said, and I certainly haven't, but it's always near, just in case. Well, that's the end of our reading today. And I just want to tell you that we're going to have an extra guest, a poet, and a poem that you have heard during this time of pandemic. And due to Scott's magic fingers and magic machinery, we're going to have her voice as part of our reading today. And we hope to do this again soon. We hope you'll come back and listen to us. And if you would enjoy being one of the writers, be sure you call. We'd be glad to have you. Thank you very much.
In the time of pandemic, and the people stayed home, and they read books, and listened, and rested, and exercised, and made art, and played games, and learned new ways of being, and were still. And they listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, and some met their shadows. And the people began to think differently, and the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed, and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses, and made new choices, and dreamed new images. And created new ways to live and heal the earth fully, as they had been healed. and they read books and listened and rested. In the time of pandemic, and the people stayed home, and they read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being, and were still. And they listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, and some met their shadows. And the people began to think differently, and the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed, and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses, and made new choices, and dreamed new images. And created new ways to live and heal the earth fully, as they had been healed.
These changing times have had an impact on a local writer and former teacher who penned a poem that quickly went viral and even grabbed Oprah's attention. We thought it best for Kitty O'Mara to share her words with all of us.
In the time of pandemic, and the people stayed home, and they read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being, and were still. And they listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced, and some met their shadows. And the people began to think differently, and the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed, and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses, and made new choices, and dreamed new images. And created new ways to live and heal the earth fully, as they had been healed.
Milwaukee PBS Vice President and General Manager Bodan Zachary talked with Kitty about the inspiration behind the poem and all the attention it's received.
Kitty O'Meara, what a pleasure it is to meet you.
Well, it's very nice to meet you too.
How has your world changed in this time? Your beautiful, haunting words have touched people around the world.
Yeah, that was not expected. That started as a very simple Facebook post. So it really wasn't sent out to the world that way. The night that I posted it, a friend just asked if she could share it.